Hey everyone, it's Rachel. Welcome to another art video. This week we are doing a collab. I'm collabing with 4 other people, and as you can tell by the title, we decided the collab was called Pimp My 5. Just one pimp. I don't know why I said pimp twice, but anyway, so each one of us chose a word, and then we had to incorporate those 5 words into a piece of art. So the words were prehistoric, purple, mummified, platypus, and spark. So the first image you saw, that was my original idea. I had this idea of like a mummified person starting to light a fire, because they have, all I could think of for prehistoric was dinosaurs at the time. And, getting ready to put the dinosaur on the spit, and you might have been able to see there was a little bit of his mummy wrappings kind of near where he was lighting the fire. So in finished, I was going to have like a little spark, because in his hands he has like a flint and steel kind of thing. But I didn't love the idea. The more I drew it, the less I loved it. So I came up with this other idea that I decided to go with instead. And so for prehistoric, I decided to Google prehistoric plants and, palms, kind of ferns, kind of, what am I thinking of? Fiddleheads, there we go, popped up, and a couple of different flowers, and they were both 2 different types of protea, I don't know how to say it. But, so that's kind of what I went with, and I decided I really like the portrait with a border look right now. So that's what I went with, and, I drew the person, and there's like a bandage on her arm, there's a bandage on one of the platypi head, and that's kind of where the mummified part, I feel like I took a little bit of the easy way out on that, but that's how I incorporated that. And basically my thought was like, oh, she's a caregiver of these platypi, I don't know the plural for platypus. You might have to leave a comment down below and let me know what you think the plural is for platypus. But or maybe it's like moose, where the plural of moose is moose and not meese, like geese. Anyway, back to this, as I've been doing lately, and I've been really kind of digging this style with the painting, is starting with a base of watercolor, and once I kind of get like the base shades down, then I go in and refine and put in a lot of detail with my colored pencils. And then I like to lay down the colored pencils pretty thick, and then once I get what I really like out of the colored pencils, then I'll break it down with some odorless mineral spirits like Gamsol, or you can just go to like Walmart or something, and they have odorless mineral spirits in a big bottle for a lot cheaper, and that's what I use, and it seems to blend my Prismacolor pencils just fine. So I did a couple layers of that, and until I was happy. I kind of jumped around a little bit. I laid down the watercolor on the border, and then I started using watercolor pencils on the lady, and then I decided to go back to the border and kind of finish a little bit of detail with the colored pencils. And the reason I did that was because I was thinking in my head, once I activate with water the watercolor pencils, I don't want it to mingle with the watercolor that I laid down in the border. So my thought was, since there's wax in the colored pencils, sorry, I'm having a hard time finding words today. Like, I don't know what my deal is. But so yeah, because of the wax and the colored pencils, I laid that down on the border, and then I put down the water on the watercolor pencil and the rest of it, just because then the water kind of beads off and the colors don't mix as much, and it wasn't going to interfere with my border that I didn't want purple on. So that's really what I did, is I laid down a bunch of watercolor with either my watercolors or my watercolor pencils, and then I did 2 layers of colored pencils. So the first layer, I went in and I did like the base mid-tones. I added a lot of the yellow and those lighter greens into the greenery. And I added, a little bit of color to the flowers and to the little curly fern things that I put in there. And once I had a good mid-tone down, then I went in with the darker green and started adding in some shading. And then I did go in I like to go in with brown for my overall shading. But for this one, I decided to use, for my Prismacolor pencils, I decided to use Tuscan Red. So it's like a reddish brown. And I chose to use that because the complementary color to green is red. So I thought the reddish brown would look really nice as the shadows with all this green and kind of help it pop a little bit. Or maybe not pop. Maybe that's not the word I'm going for. I don't know. I thought it looked really good with the Tuscan Red as the shading instead of my normal dark brown that I like to go in with, or my sienna. Which sienna, burnt sienna, does have a little bit of a reddish tone, but it's more of like a yellowy red. And I just really liked how the Tuscan Red was looking. So I just ran with the Tuscan Red for my shadows this time around. And then once I got the greenery to where I really liked it, then I jumped back to working on the girl and getting her, because the only purple I have in this is her dress. I was thinking I was going to add more purple, and it didn't happen, because I originally wanted to make the platypi, plata something. I wanted to make them purple, but I forgot that I wanted to make them purple till after I had started coloring her dress, and I was like, oh, well, her dress is already purple. I can't make these little guys purple, and I couldn't do like Phineas and Ferb and make them like a teal green. Well, I could, but I just felt like they would get lost because of all the green I already have around them. So I just went with kind of a tan. I know that's not a normal color. Like, I think a normal color, and I'm doing air quotes and you can't see it, is like a brown, like a dark brown. But I went with a lighter color because the whole image, the background as a whole, is very dark, very rich. And so I wanted to make them lighter. I didn't want them to blend in. I kind of wanted them to stand out more. And just because I wanted a different color, I also made their bills blue. I know that's not a realistic color, but that's just what I felt like doing. And it was just my artistic direction I decided to go. And the um, volcano, there we go. The volcano was where the spark was going to happen. And that was going to be like a last step or middle step. But I completely forgot about that. And I'll get to that in a minute as well. But with the volcano, I went in with my watercolors and I dropped in some browns and blacks and tried to add a little bit of shading and dimension because lava rock is very dimensiony. It's got a lot of nooks and crannies, and I was trying to show a lot of that. So instead of doing my normal either hatch lines, I'm not saying that right, whatever. But usually how I color in with colored pencils is I either do lines in the same direction, or I do hatches, or I do little circles. But with the texture of the rock on the volcano, I decided to just go crazy with all the colors. And I threw in a bunch of browns and stuff like that just to get a lot of texture. I just wanted to add a bunch of texture to the rocks. And then once I had all the colored pencils scribbled, I did blend those in. And then I did overall, I waited until I had all of the colored pencil down. I jumped around a lot between watercolor and colored pencil, but I waited till everything was colored pencil before I soaked it with the odorless mineral spirits, because it soaks into the paper really good, and it takes a while, especially the first layer where you're using a lot of the solvent, because you start from what I've been learning is you start out the first layer, you do a large amount of solvent, and then you do less and less with each layer you do. So with the amount of solvent that I usually put down in the beginning, it takes a while to dry. So once that was finally dry, I did a wash over the volcano with watered down black acrylic, and it's just the cheap acrylic that I get from Walmart for 50 cents. It does the job. I know there's better acrylics out there, but that's just what I have on hand. And then I went back on the smoke and added some shading and highlighting with my colored pencils, blended that out, and then finished the depth of the smoke with watered down black acrylic as well. And I completely forgot until I was editing this video that I forgot to put the spark in there. So I threw it in there before I scanned the image, and you'll see the scanned image at the very end of this video. I don't know if I love it. I could have done better, but it was just an afterthought, unfortunately, which is kind of sad in a way because spark was my word. That's the word I chose. I was going to choose another P word, but in the discussion we had on Discord, it was like, oh, there's a suspicious number of P words, and someone picked mummified was the first word that was put down, and then there were 3 P's, and I was like, oh, I better not do another P word. So I couldn't think of anything else than spark. And that was because of the original idea I had in my head. But once I got it on paper, I didn't like it, unfortunately. And I went with this. So let me know what you think of the added spark. I don't love it, but I love this image. I really like how this image overall turned out. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about this challenge. It was a lot of fun, and it was pretty challenging, or collab, but it was also challenging. I will have all of the other participants linked in the description box below. Check them out too, and I will see you guys next week. Bye!